to another episode of Morelia Python Radio, and this is part 2 of breeding pythons. Yes, this year we're bringing you two
did we ever
episodes.
Did we ever have to do this? Was this ever
No.
before a two-parter? When did
No.
were we hurting on ratings and we had to kind of stretch this one out and make it like a cliffhanger?
No.
Will our heroes survive breeding season? Tune in next week.
Yes, to find out.
The answer is always no. So,
Yes. By the skin of our teeth.
Somehow we keep doing it.
Yeah, so it's a two-parter. So if you haven't listened to part 1, I would suggest you go back. And so we kind of went off on some tangents throughout that episode.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just about different things going into preparing yourself for things you have to think about that maybe you don't think about until they happen to you. And then you say, oh, shit, I wish somebody would have said this to me ahead of time.
We
And
just did. But it's
usually,
but it's also helpful because that's one of the things where when you're thinking about breeding season, you're always like, and then the snakes will get put together. But that's like step 6. There are so many other steps before that to set you up for success. So that's kind of where we went off on our tangents. And now I think we're here where I think we ended the last episode with, and now the snakes are together. It's like, that's shit. It was a lot.
We ended where they lock up. And I guess it is, I guess part of it is like, as me and Owen have been doing this now for 12 years, 10 years breeding.
My first breeding
a long
season,
time.
Yeah, my first breeding season was 2000. My first python breeding season was 2009.
Okay.
And then my first snake breeding was 2005.
Right. So it's been a while.
Yeah, a little bit,
And each year, you find, at least for me, each year I find I learn something new or something that I didn't think about or some problem.
Yeah.
That I didn't know.
You will always learn something, most of the time they're good things. Other times, soul crushing. But yes, you will learn something.
Yeah. So we made it up till they lock up, and I thought it would be good that we stopped there, and it just so happened that was at the 2-hour mark. Oh, coincidence? I don't think so.
No, Gone are the years of when we do 4-hour shows anymore,
Yeah, we're old. Well, I'm old.
Well, no, listen, some of us are checking into the retirement home very soon. Others are still looking at the brochure, but we're still getting close. I mean,
we're talking a few years at this point.
I mean, at this point, this show has aged me horribly. So it's.
But we're gonna. I thought it would be good to sort of hit on the spring breeder side of things
because it's a completely different animal.
Yes, and take us all the way up to like ovulation and pre-lay sheds and all that kind of stuff, and then we're going to go into that as applies to all, because basically once you get eggs, it's kind of all the same, at least for carpet pythons.
Right.
So let's just get right into it. So diamond pythons. Okay. So disclaimer, I have not bred diamond pythons yet, but I'm going to share with you what I'm going to do. A lot of my information has come from the diamond people that we've had on the show.
People who have bred diamond pythons.
Correct. The complete carpet python book. That's another one.
Another good book.
Which I'm sure the new book will be out soon, but
the new one isn't completely different. It's completely topsy-turvy. What the hell is this?
We're all wrong.
Oh God!
You don't breed them that way, but I got eggs. No,
Ooh, incorrect. Wait, but I got eggs. You did it wrong.
Yeah. So I guess if you get eggs, you didn't.
It doesn't matter. I don't care what the fuck you do. If you get eggs, you were successful.
Right. So we call them spring breeders because breeding occurs in springtime in Australia between September and November. Now you say here in America, September and November. Wait that's not springtime. That's fall. But remember, carpet pythons are from the southern hemisphere, so it is the opposite. So when Australia is basically September and November is when their spring is that. So basically the seasons are reversed, which is kind of cool for us as a podcast because it's like a perpetual season all the time.
You're right. And like right now, I've been watching all the Australian guys going, another clutch of eggs. And if I'm not paying attention, it's early in the morning, and somebody's like, "Oh man, look at these eggs." I'm like, "Who the fuck is getting eggs this time of year?" Oh,
Right.
So yeah,
Yes.
takes you a minute.
So, Slip and Shine wrote a paper
Yep.
that was about basically what they observed about diamond pythons and reproduction and stuff like that in the wild. So it has been observed that unlike other carpets, male diamond pythons are tolerant of each other. They have been shown to share areas with with females as well as other males. Basically, I don't know if what comes to mind when I think of that is sort of garter snakes, but I don't think it's the level of garter snakes.
I don't think it is either. I think it's just the problem is
because they're not hibernating,
right?
Yeah.
But when you have a place that let's just say it gets really cold, but then you have to get out where the sun is, and the sun's only going to really hit a few really choice places, you'll kind of cooperate with each other so everybody can get on the rock. So it's like, they're all seen in the same place. Well, yeah, because that's the place you need to go to live. So it's
so diamond pythons sort of do, I guess you would say, brumation.
Yeah, I mean, I would
not
call
really
it
a hibernation like what happens in the U.S. for like rattlesnakes.
Right,
and,
they're not going to hibernacula
garter
and
snakes.
hiding underneath the ground for months. Yeah,
Right. And I think it's probably because I don't think that Australia, at least where these snakes are from, get any type of weather like we do here, say in North America, like
Northern America,
Northeast America.
Yes, Northern America, yeah. Are we talking like snow? Because part of Australia's got to get snow, right?
Well, I know up in like the mountains and stuff, they get snow, but
right.
I mean, and I'm sure that they probably have gotten snow down in the southern portion of Australia, but I don't know if it's like what we experience.
It's like Colorado, where it's like, it's June. Here's an inch of snow. Now it's 92. It's like, what is happening? Like, is it like Rob Stone weather, or is it like, which I still have to get my sign for back here of like how many podcasts we've had since Rob Stone, and I'll just tear it. So when he shows up, so
yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I who do we know who lives in that area? That would be. Is it Peter Birch that lives down there?
Peter Birch does live there.
Right. Anybody else?
It's like a subtropical. So to me, I think of it more as like what happens in Florida, right?
Yeah, I'd buy that. Yeah.
You know,
where basically turn the U.S. and flip it around, and that's what
correct.
They are.
Correct. Yes. So I'm gonna go with I'm not 100%, but I don't think that they experience like like snow like what we would get, at least where the diamond pythons are found.
Right? Isn't it one? What was the one? Like, it isn't Tasmania like really cold, like colder than mainland Australia and stuff like that?
Yeah, because it's further south. Yeah. Obviously, closer to Antarctica and
Antarctica. Man, you were having a bad day, buddy.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
All right, regroup.
Redo it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I would figure you'd probably have harsher climate in or at least harsher winter in places like New Zealand and Tasmania, but I'm not sure where the cutoff is. Like let's say if Australia was a little bit bigger of a continent, and if it was like drifting a little bit further south, would it have areas that would experience mass snowfall?
Tasmania
does Australia get snow?
The Central Highlands.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. However, snow rarely settles at sea level. Right. So, okay.
Okay. So that makes sense. And so I would agree with like what you were saying before. It doesn't sit there, like 3 feet doesn't sit there and stay there for 4 days or weeks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's not like what we got. So, one of the things that that again, this is just a little tidbit. You take it as you will. You can use it to your advantage when you sort of know how they work. Or so males are cued in to sort of track down the females by chemical cues, and when those receptive females are I guess, moving around, those males are on the hunt for them. As we've seen with carpets, like one of the and we sort of talked about this in the last episode, the telltale sign is that once those males are cruising in their cage,
Yep.
it's sort of a cue that things are moving in the right direction.
Right.
So, there was in that study, there were males, they moved over 100 meters. It's also thought that females, they lay every 3 years, and this is just due to the cost of the female's body. I think the study they did, she will decrease weight by 50%. So that's, and to put that back
rough,
on in
man.
the wild, it's not like she's gonna, as soon as she gets off the clutch, there's gonna be a nice white rat waiting for her to sort of take down.
Or somebody's gonna be feeding her while she's sitting on the clutch. Like, yeah, I mean, I would imagine it takes that long for a wild female to recover.
Yeah. So with diamond python, so what we're going to do is I'm right now, I'm just sort of talking about a little bit of natural history, but we'll get into like what I'm sort of going to do. Yep. But diamond pythons, Bredli, and I would say imbricata. Now inlands are sort of this one.
What? You're not going to include inlands in this?
Well, the reason that I don't. So here's the question I have, and I'm sure that one of our lovely Australian listeners will in the know would probably reach out to us. But my thought, is it possible that inlands that are in the southern portion of the range, right? So it would be similar to where you would find like diamond pythons and imbricata, like, in the same, what would that be, longitude, right?
Yes.
The latitude.
Launch, lat. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So they're sort of from that same type of climate,
right?
Where they're in the southern portion of Australia. Obviously, imbricata is on the opposite side. Bredli is sort of in the middle, but they're in a desert, so it gets cold at night,
right?
And it's warmer during the day. But we'll get into that. So I'm wondering if it's possible that the more northern species of inlands, reproductive ways are sort of similar to what you would find in a coastal carpet, which is maybe why you sort of have
luck with some
people have luck with it sort of either way. Just a thought. I mean,
I would say it's a possibility. I would say that it's all going to go back to that thing that we talked about last time, where it's let's say you need 3 things to get your female to go, and it's any mixture of these 7 things that might affect them. So it's
it could be that too.
Right. So who knows? But
so in the wild, inlands are breeding in the spring, right? They're laying eggs midsummer, and the hatchlings are emerging late summer, early fall. Right. So similar to what
we do here in Bredli and diamonds and stuff like that.
Yeah. Similar to what diamonds do in the wild, and also similar to what imbricata does.
Because that's the best time to have the babies hatch. Right.
So they're gravid. So there was a gravid female that was observed in the wild at the end of December, and I think this is where they thought that this would suggest that that they would lay their eggs in midsummer sort of time frame. So there's that. So inlands, I don't know. I'm sort of gonna. I sort of have sort of a mix of the two. So they're in my right now. Currently, they're in my main snake room. Which is
that's right. You're trying inlands this year.
Yeah. So the female is on the bottom of the room, so she's close to the floor.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like this.
You're naturally you're treating her like a spring breeder, but also kind of not treating her like a spring breeder. I get what you're doing. You're straddling the line. And hey, listen, if that works, don't fucking change it. Like if that works, don't next year go, now I will make you colder. Who cares? Like it works.
Right. So I guess my success this year with them will determine where to stay.
That's something that we say that what you should do is stick to something and do it and consistently keep doing it.
Right.
But like I think what you should do is when you start changing things, definitely change things, a little bit by little. Don't do the first thing don't start inconveniencing yourself and doing major stuff the first year you're going to try. Because then if it works, then you're going to have to keep doing all that crap. And maybe only one of those things was the trigger. So try this. And then if it works, stick with it. And then if it doesn't work, then push it a little bit. Like, don't start with the whole deep freezing them outside and shoveling snow into their cage. Like, that'd be a dumb thing to start. It doesn't work? Maybe.
So that's a little bit of the natural history of inlands and diamonds, right? I think the difference with diamond pythons in particular, and I think this also will apply to Bredli, and we'll check this in a minute, but males, right? I would say 3 to 4 years of age.
True. Yeah.
Is about the time. Now, I've heard of people maybe doing it younger, whatever. Like we said, it really doesn't hurt the male.
Yeah.
But I think because they're so different in how it. Well, we'll get into this. So let me talk about how you sort of keep them. So normal times, like normal time, how I keep them is we're looking at an ambient of 68 to 77, somewhere in the high 70s to the high 60s.
That's the cool side, ambient temp, whatever. Yeah.
Right. That's the ambient temp, right?
Gotcha.
And that would be 20 to 25 Celsius, right? So the thing is that they have a hot spot of about 88 to 92.
Yep.
Which would be Fahrenheit, 31 to 33 Celsius.
That would be freedom height or eagle units. But yeah.
And sort of the key to with diamond pythons, right, is that differently than carpets, is that like normal carpets, is you sort of reduce those temps as well. So you reduce those ambient temps. You don't reduce the basking temp. You reduce the time of the basking is available.
What I like to use it as is what I do with the Bredli is so most of the year they're like this, where their hot spot is only a couple degrees away from what the ambient room temp is. And then as winter goes, that gap between the two temperatures just keeps expanding because the night drop is going to get worse, but the hot spot is going to stay the way it is. So all of a sudden this one that just drops down here. So the hot spot remains the same, but the gap between their nighttime low and their daytime high just gets huge. And that is what ends up triggering them to actually get going.
So unlike with regular carpets where their ambient temperature stays the same and their hot spots stay the same during the day, right? Diamond pythons, you reduce the ambient temperature. And so this is why I've always said that I believe that diamond pythons are one of the, not that all carpets or all pythons wouldn't utilize or have some sort of, value from like a UV hotspot type of
a cycle kind of a deal.
Yeah. But using like a light as a cycle as opposed to say a radiant heat panel or underbelly heat or something like that, where I think that they're just baskers. It's really ingrained in them to sort of bask. And my observations have been that they utilize that more than any of the carpets that I have. And they're very sort of, in a way, they're sort of smart about it, where they know when that temperature is going to go. Like they sort of learn the cycle.
I would love to try an experiment where, all right, well now in a magical world where imbricata are available, would you keep imbricata just like a diamond?
I think I would.
Okay. Now
I think I would.
I would love to see if you got, like, say you got diamonds and you got inlands this year. I would love to see what would happen if you raised an inland, like just grabbed one from the clutch and raised it with the diamond pythons, like the same way, and see if it starts learning the cues of the sun and all that shit. Then it's like, are the diamonds smart, or are we just giving them like the light? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's like, so let me just clarify that. Yeah. I'm not saying that like, that they're on some level where
they're a mystical dragon that sits on a stick. Right, exactly. Got it.
They're not chondros. I mean, come on.
come now. But yeah, like would a snake in those parameters learn what it would need to do to survive?
I think it would. I mean, I think it's just. I think they're just like in their DNA or however their function, their basic instincts are to heat up. This is why it's thought that they're blacker than other carpets so that they can absorb that that sun. If you listen to the episode with the Reptile Fight Club, I think this is where Justin was getting at that diamonds are a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
They're different,
Right.
So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just like I said, slowly start reducing the temps, right? On the same sort of cycle. So like understand that the carpets and the diamonds are going to be cycling at the same time, cycling a little bit differently. However, when you do introductions and when you're going to get eggs, it's going to be what's different, right? So the daytime temps are lowered, like I said, to about 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 21 Celsius. But the basking temps remain unchanged. But the access is reduced down to about 5 to 6 hours.
Right.
Basically, you do this for about 1 to 3 months, 1.5 to 3 months before you gradually start increasing the temps back to normal. About 3 to 6 weeks after bringing the temps back up, you try to feed them a little bit, get them going, let them know that things are around. I think you've talked about the sewing with Bradley is that like once they eaten once, they sort of go into a shed. Like the female will go into a shed.
What ends up happening is, so I drop mine down, and Bradley are one of those weird things where during the summer months they're like orange and red and gorgeous. Winter comes and they're just brown and black and drab. And the problem is with the Bredli is that they'll never turn off of the food. I've been hit more times by my Bredli during winter because I just go into autopilot. I'm like, getting water bowls and carpets will leave you alone because they're all cold and tired and don't want to deal with shit. And then you open up the Bredli's cage and they're keyed up, turned on, and they hit you right on the hand and wrap you. And it's like, cool, that's fun. But with the Bredli, when you bring them up, they're always my first ones to eat when things start warming back up. Boys and girls, doesn't matter. And then right after they eat, usually the female goes into a shed, and then the male will also too. And then they'll peel, and that's when I'll start seeing copulation because I've put my Bredli, like I've wintered them together, and I've seen locks in like January and February. But when I get the eggs aren't coming till like July or till June. So there's no chance in hell that the locks I saw in January were, unless you retain the sperm the entire time. So I don't know what those are doing, or if that's just because whatever they feel like it. But
do you think that? So I know. Sorry to interrupt you, but you just said that you're putting them together and sort of so in blood pythons, right? It's been shown that putting a male with a female will get the female to sort of induce follicular growth. Do you think it's the same? Okay.
I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the act of locking up and breeding, also gets that going. But I would say that you don't necessarily see the results or eggs or anything until you get further in there. So they'll cycle, they'll lock up a few times, and then they'll warm up. As they're warming up, they usually, because I cool them in the other room together in big 6-foot cages, and then I'll bring them back into the snake room when the temperatures hit a certain, like, rise up enough. And then I'll separate them, feed them, and put them back together. Sometimes that act of moving them and then separating them and then feeding them and then putting them back together like wipes the slate clean, and they'll be locking up anyway. But I will see sheds out of males and females right at that right time of once they're come up and once they've eaten. So, and it's almost like, when you offer a male a meal right when they warmed up and they refuse, you're like, good, you're on point. I've never seen a Bredli male turn down a meal. Like they'll be like, I doesn't care.
Well, what's crazy about the diamonds, right, is in particular when they are even at that cold state, as long as they have that access to that basking area, they still eat. They're still active. They're still which is kind of crazy because it's hard to wrap your brain around a python at 50 degrees.
Well, we talked about how Like we know they need the heat for digestion and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the minimum amount of heat, the minimum temperature they need to properly digest?
Well, I think it's been said that it's in the like 82,
Right.
83. Yeah.
So you just got to get the body temp up into the 80s. So even if the basking time is cut down by so much, as long as it hits a certain point where they can get that temperature into the 80s, I think they're going to be like, I'll eat. Like, and that's just where it is. So
yeah. And I would think that, and again, this is just my thought, and this is not, there's no fact behind this, but my thinking would be that, like, I would think that in the wild, particularly, right? You know what I'm saying?
They'll eat it. Listen,
Right.
I was on my Instagram today, I think, and there was an adult carpet python, very dark, and it broke into some outdoor guinea pig hutch, and it ate all the guinea pigs.
Right.
To the point where it couldn't get out of the hutch after it ate all the guinea pigs, and then the hutch got too hot, and the snake fried. It died. So by the time, I forget whose Instagram it was on, I would love to give you a shout out, but by the time the snake removal person arrived, snake was dead, and it was just, they laid it out, and it was just full of, like, from about midway down the neck was just nothing but lumps of all the guinea pigs that it just ate. Wow. And you're telling me that this thing, I don't think any python will refuse any kind of meal at any point.
Right.
You know,
especially like a wild.
Of course, a wild one. I mean? Like, listen, listen. A female sitting on an egg and a bird comes flying up, I'm gonna kill that thing and I'm gonna eat it. Like, I don't think they eat on their eggs. No. There's just nothing that ever comes in front of them within striking distance.
So, I would, I'm with you. I think that the only difference would be is if they know that they. I mean, I wonder. Well, I guess this would be more of a question. I wonder if they know how much energy they have and have to use. So if they, so obviously if they're going to digest something, they're going to have to utilize.
Well, also it's the thing of, like, are they warm enough to expel the energy to hunt and kill something? So let's say they warmed up on the rock and on their way back to their nice spot that they want to curl up in and kind of chill, something scurries across them. I guarantee you that snake hits that anything.
Yeah. It's a good question that I don't think that people know the answer to. I would think
we
that,
should solve it. We should get cameras and follow diamond pythons for a year.
My thought that if there was a difference, right, I would think that pythons in the more steady tropical by the equator where the temperatures really don't fluctuate that much. I mean, it's been shown that water pythons are leaving their eggs before they're done hatched.
Because they're fine.
Right. So, and they still hatch out, and that's in the wild. So I would imagine that if a meal comes along for something like that they definitely are going to take advantage of that. Now, the thing that I would be thinking about, like that cold weather python, is it going to be able to?
It's not going to be able to leave. I mean,
is it going to be? And how is it going to digest that meal or whatever? I don't know. It's a good question. We'll have to ask somebody that knows more than us at some point.
We have to ask smarter people.
Yes. But I'm sure if Scott's listening to this, he will.
He's probably yelling at his car radio again, because this is one of those ones where he can't get to us. But he'll just send us messages later, be like, "Listen,
goddamn Yanks,
you morons, like, dear morons." Yes, another letter from Scott.
I mean, Eric and Owen.
I mean, you too.
Yes. Anyway, I don't know. Again, we're going off on tangents a little bit.
But I don't know how. We're just, please God, reel it in.
So okay. So we're dropping the temps. We're bringing it back up. They're coming back up, and now you got about 3 to 6 weeks where you're bringing them up. Probably, I'd say about a month, right? So we're looking at probably March. You're going to start warming them up.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit before. It really just kind of depends on the weather. I mean, from what I've seen from people in our area, it's sort of like if the winter ends early,
March.
But then we seem to get these sneaker snowstorms that come in like mid-March, like just wallop us,
Listen, don't, if you're like, you need to be fluid, because if you're like, I will raise temps March 3rd, and you look at the thing, and it's like you're suspected to get 3 feet of snow. Wait till don't go downstairs and attempt to raise temperatures when
Right.
Yeah, so be fluid about it.
I would think that probably I've watched the weather more in my life from breeding pythons than I ever worried about the weather in my day-to-day life.
You've looked at things as a python breeder. You've looked at things you never would have thought you would ever paid any fucking attention to. What lunar cycle is it, Eric?
Lunar cycles.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Like, I'm sitting there. I remember when I was still working for Dad, and I'm sitting there, and I'm leaving the post office, and everybody's running around like crazy because there's some sort of bomb cyclone coming in. Dad's like, we should probably close up early. I'm like, yes, I can go home and throw all the snakes together. Like I was, you're right, I agree. Like it was all that kind of stuff where, that's the shit that, I'm more excited about that crap. And that's the stuff you pay attention to. And you're right. Sometimes when you separate, like you warm up and you put everything together in March, yeah, I mean, we had a weird, like you've had snow flurries when it gets kind of warm. All of a sudden you'll have 1 or 2 days where it's cold enough that there are some flurries that run around in late March, kind of early April. And I mean, those are great. Usually everything's locked up at that point. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, as the temperatures are coming up, the females growing the follicles. And at this point's where the introductions now with this, I always do males into females cages. I just think that the male is cruising, looking for the female.
Yeah.
Female has all that scent and stuff within her cage. This is why I think we talked about in the last episode where like you're cleaning, but you're not cleaning.
You're not cleaning. Like
you're right.
This last weekend I did a major clean on a lot of the female tubs. I checked all the boxes. Scrubbed everything down we're talking like bleach, we're talking Dawn dish soap and stuff like that. Everything got scrubbed because now I'm just going to be doing spot cleaning, especially if they only have if they have mulch cages and stuff like that. It's going to be spot cleaning until probably springtime. And then a lot of other stuff like paper, I'm going to change the papers, but I'm not going to touch the insides of their hide boxes unless they're outside of the hide boxes. So want them to be comfortable. You're like the same deal. Want it to smell like her, and it should be that cages she should have home field advantage because he's going to look for her. If I take her and throw her in his cage, it's all going to smell like him, and that's no good. Plus, it helps with it being her cage because he's smelling her all over the place. You can kind of also fake him out with other male scents and stuff like that, like throwing the shed in there and things like that. So the only time I would ever necessarily put animals in a male's cage would not be that male. It would be a different male and then a female kind of a deal.
Yeah. And I don't think that we're saying that I'm sure that there's been people that have done it the other way, right? I'm sure that it's happened.
Yeah. I mean, he'll find her, but
yeah, I think it's like you want to try to utilize every instinct that those animals have in order to get them to breed, right?
And also, I mean, I would say that out of the 2 animals in the pair, you have the male and the female, it's okay to stress the boy out a little bit. It's like he's going to do what he's going to do, and then he's going to go back to his cage, have a nice rat, and go to sleep for several months. The female's got to do all the other shit after he leaves. So if one of them is going to get stressed out during the breeding part, make it him. Like it's fine. He'll be all right.
Yeah, and this is why we said in the episode 1 that breeding is very stressful, just all around.
You said what was the thing they said lost? Like what was the percentage of the diamond python weight loss?
50%.
50%.
Right.
And you know what? That's a healthy, ready to breed animal. 50%.
Yeah.
That's why we're saying last episode, if you're on the fence, don't do it. Like it's yeah.
Yeah. And they do look
horrible.
Pretty bad.
Yep.
Especially with maternal incubation. And we'll get into this. But so we put the male into the female's cage. I'm assuming you do this with Bradley too, right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. put the male. So I've read. I don't know if I'm going to approach this like I do my other pythons, my other carpets, where I just leave them together and set and forget type of deal. But with diamonds, it seems to say that you should keep them in there for a few days, pull them out, and put them back. Pull them out for a couple days, put them back. So what do you do with the Bradley?
I do that with everything, to be honest
Really?
with you, is I put them all in for several weeks, and then I will separate for a day because then I'll feed.
Okay.
Because if my females will eat during this time, I want them to, because that's
sure.
That's calories in, that's fuel to the fire, that's they won't look as crappy after the eggs. That might be some bigger, healthier eggs. So I'll do that. So they will be separated for, I think, 48 hours, because then they eat and I give everybody a chance to kind of digest a little bit. Then everybody goes back in. So that happens probably every 2 weeks, something like that.
Now, do you notice your males are feeding
some will
consistently when you do that, or some will? It's like a 50-50 shot type of thing.
It's one of those things where I always have the one where he just is so keyed in, he doesn't give a shit. I can hit him with a rat, but most of my boys will eat, because I keep my boys on the lean side, where it's like they hit small rats whenever I feel like it for their entire lives. So when I offer them food, they're just like, screw it, it might not come again, for a while. And then they're
like wild carpets.
Exactly. They hit it, they eat it, and they're like, okay. But then there's never any problem. Like, the worst thing I think you could possibly do would be to like get your male and be like, you're normally on smalls, I'm going to give you a large, because then he's useless for weeks. Like, it would be that. So but I do, like I said, I do have some boys that just don't give a shit. They're all keyed in and they're all revved up. The good thing is that sometimes I feel like carpets or pythons in general have goldfish brain, where it's like I pull him out of her cage, they both eat, and then 48 hours later I put them back in, and he's like, who the hell are you? And then he's all over her and stuff like that. It's like, at one point they were on opposite ends of the cage, and now he's spurring up her, and I'm like, okay. So that's the other part too, where sometimes these random introductions, and also my boys might be shedding, and maybe before I introduce the male back to the female, I throw a shed in there. So now he comes back in, he smells his girl, but there's somebody else who's been here, and now he's all freaking out. So
yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring up, right? If you put them together, one of the cues that I look for is like maybe when to separate them is sort of when they're not together anymore. You'll see it to where they'll sort of lay together, they'll bask together. It's immediate. Like the first time I was breeding carpets and I saw them together, I was like, oh my God, it's a lock.
You're shaking the cage because you're gripping it. It's like No, that doesn't mean shit.
So I think basically from what I've read, again, this is just what I've read and how I'm going to approach it, is that basically from now on with these introductions, it's basically a couple of months, which would be the same as what you would do with the winter breeders. It's just in a different time frame. So it's kind of hard for me, because I'm so used to breeding pythons a certain way, to think that now it's going to be different, right? I'm going to be breeding these pythons at this time of the year. And then when that sort of cycle is done, right? The winter breeders are breeding in January, February, March. And then I'm going to start breeding the spring breeders in March, April, May.
It helps when you have other shit. Because let's put it this way. I would be doing the carpet pythons and all that stuff. And then after the carpets, because they would start coming up in March, stuff like that. And I get my first couple clutches of carpet pythons in like April, May, which, I always had this one female that would just breed like immediately. Like, and then the eggs would be like, she was the first one to breed, first one to lay the eggs. And she was like, all right, here's your shit. Give me my rat. I'm like, all right. So I would have eggs from that point, but then, collier birds are coming up in March. And then you feed them like crazy, and then you're doing introductions and stuff like that. So those seasons would kind of go past the carpet season. So plugging bredli in is just almost like I plugged them in more with the collier birds than I did with the carpets.
Right.
So Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is why people think I think the key with these species is the getting that cold temperature.
They need it. Like I have, and they need it where I've had a couple times, I've had a couple people say, like, oh man, I dropped mine down to like 55. I'm like, well, how long? They're like, a day. I'm like, they need a little more.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that everybody is like, I don't know if I should. They'll be fine. It hurts, but you'll be fine. But
yeah, it does.
it's not even that. Like, I think I have 1 week where they're at their lowest temp is 55.
Okay.
And then I'll spike it a little bit. So they'll be in this week where their lowest temp is 55, and then maybe one night I'll drop it 5 more degrees to like 50, and then 55 for like that whole. I think it's 2 weeks. This is when I alter temperatures. Hold on, I have my thing here. No, it's every week is when I alter temps and stuff like that. So yeah, from the 26th of December to the 1st of January, they're at 55.
Yeah, I did a chart one time where, and this was obviously with the winter breeders, but like it goes over, basically, I want to say it's like a 6 to 8 week.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's
up and down.
That's January to February. I'm sorry. That's January 26th to February 1st. They drop to 55. Because then I'll keep kind of
ramping it back up.
And then the drop hits 65 around February 14th, which is, again, we use holidays. Valentine's Day. That's when you start getting ready to put the boys in and stuff like that. And then the male intros happen in end of February. And then they're back in the room by the end of February, March. But that's if I'm doing separate. I just keep wintering my bredli together, and it works. Because they keep doing one pair of bredli a year.
Right.
Which is fine. It's because my stonewatch won't grow.
Right.
They just, but yeah.
It's just different. So yeah, let me talk about that real quick. So it's like I'm dropping. So say my nighttime temps and again we're kind of jumping back and forth, but we're talking winter breeders now. So nighttime temps would be like, say it's 78 for a week, and then it drops to 76 for a week, and then it drops the next week to 74, and then to 72. Now that doesn't mean that it has to be exactly 72 degrees, right? There's going to be some nights where it goes down to 70, and there's going to be other nights where it goes up to 74.
Right.
But my thermostat in my room on my heater that's in there is set for that, and sometimes it won't get necessarily colder than that, but it's not going to get warmer
than that. Exactly.
So but you're going to have fluctuations, and again, also knowing the areas of your room, right? There's going to be certain areas like you'll hear some people talk about how, well, I sort of talked about it in this episode, where they're putting some species closer to the floor because obviously it's going to be cooler down there than it would be at the top of your room. This is where having fans in your room circulating the air, pointing down to the floor and sort of circulating that all around will kind of keep them more. I think the room that I've seen, the 2 rooms that come to mind where I've seen it like really, really nicely done was Keith McPeak's and Matt Minatola's, right? He's got fans in all the corners of the room. He's got thermostats on the bottom of the floor,
right?
And on the top of the floor. And it's crazy how tuned in he is to their rooms. Both those guys. But yeah. So and then basically once I hit that temp of like and again I'm shooting for 70 degrees as the cool ambient air at night. For jungles, coastals, IJs, I guess inlands. We'll see how that goes. And then it's going to start to rise back up. So it goes up a couple degrees and a couple degrees until you're back to what my ambient room is in the 80s, right? So you got a 10-degree swing basically going down and then coming back up.
Yep. So. And that's what you need. You need those kind of swings. Otherwise you won't get anything.
Yeah. And I think it's not a shock to the system. But I also kind of think, and this could be total bullshit, it could be just in my mind, but I sort of think that those babies being exposed to those swings down at night, again, as long as they're exposed to heat during the day, I think that you'll be okay. But I don't feed as much for babies during this time because again, I don't want to worry about if they can't digest a meal or whatever the case would be. So I will offer food. I do from time to time, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. I just look at them. If they look like they're getting a little, you look like you're a little thin, I'll throw them.
Here goes something. Yeah.
And I'll usually use smaller meals during this time
Yeah.
for the babies. You know,
I give smaller meals for everybody during this time because this is one of those you don't want to stress them out too much. And then also when everything's coming up for spring, again, like what I said, that's when you give them the smaller meals because you want them to eat, you want them to get the calories, but you don't want them to be sluggish. And then after breeding season's over, when everybody's now returned to their corners and she's already laid the egg, that's when you can start feeding heavy. That's when you get the bigger meals out. That's when you can do more meals at a time and stuff like that. And that's when you save it. So save the big meals for after breeding season. When after eggs.
Yeah. I slowly ramp up that too, right?
Size and stuff like that.
Size of prey, right?
I'll right before in August is when I'll do the females that could take a medium could take a large, but are normally on mediums. That's when they get the largest. That's when you kind of put them. That's when I give the female a trout. It's one of those things. So
right. Yeah. So basically, at this point, it's just a matter of waiting for the female to ovulate. Right. Mm-hmm. Here's a couple tricks that I've just done over the years, where I went through the process, and the female just didn't seem like she was going to go. And it's like I had other animals in the room that were ovulating, and ovulation is a weird thing because if you don't catch it in the time frame that it is, which is usually 24 hours, you'll sort of you'll think you missed it, right? And basically she, what would it be, like the lower third of her body kind of swells up?
Yeah, it looks like she swallowed a rat, but she didn't. And I've been fooled with ovulation swells thinking that they were gravid because they've been in with each other. And I'm like, oh man, she's huge, and I've got them locks, and then I separate them, and then she shrinks back up, and I'm like, I screwed up, and that happens a bunch. So, yep.
But what I've done is that if I notice that she's not really moving in any type of way, is I will give her a small meal, and I've actually induced ovulation.
Through feeding,
from doing that, feed her a small rat, maybe in a mouse. Sometimes I'll do mice, I'll do a large mouse.
My favorite thing to do is I get the bags of chicks, and I'll throw them chicks because they'll eat it. There's not that big of a deal. It's not a rodent, and
and I don't really understand. I guess my thinking would be, and again, this is just speculation on my part. Is that maybe she felt that she didn't have enough resources. Maybe I didn't feed her enough going into the breeding season. And here it is. It's like, oh, okay, wait, there is food around. So I can, use this energy in order to, continue the follicular growth and to finally get eggs. And also the other thought is that sometimes maybe it kicks in an instinct of, oh, wait, there's prey around, which means that there's going to be prey for the offspring. So I will sort of go forward with breeding.
Yep.
So I don't know. But that's something that if you sort of know, what were the signs that I basically just had other people that were telling me that they were getting ovulations, and other females in my room were ovulating. So I was like, well, what the hell? And I just sort of did it, and it kind of worked. So I don't know. It's just a trick.
Dude, and I'm terrible at spotting ovulation swells. I really am.
Me too.
So sometimes it's just, and also the problem is that I'll look at this animal, and I've been watching this animal for its entire life, every day, all these years, stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not sure. You'll come over and you'll be like, the fuck aren't you sure about? It's huge. It's massive. It's solid. So it's one of those things where I'm just the kind of person who will second guess it. I usually have that one break with reality every season where I'm like, I'm not going to get any eggs and I'm a failure. And then
I know the feeling.
And then a month later, I'm like, there are too many eggs and I'm a failure.
Right. And it's either way I failed.
Either way I've failed. And that's just part of it where kind of got to try to be in tune with it, but you're going to miss it. You have potential of missing this stuff. So it's better to put the male in there, and if you're on the question about it, leave him in there and stuff like that. So that you won't miss these kind of things and these opportunities. But same thing, like you said, they can ovulate through feeding, so separating is fine, but try to get that male back in there as soon as possible.
Yeah. So yeah, then basically,
then she becomes hard as a rock. Her belly
Yeah.
scales pop out, and then you're in the money.
Yeah, so like what Owen was talking about, right? There's always this it's much easier to tell them in other animals for some reason. Sometimes it's harder to tell on your animal. I should say, so what do your females do before ovulation? Are you find them on the cool side or on the warm side?
Warm side. Before ovulation, they're in their
Warm
favorites.
side?
Yep, they're in the favorite spots. They're doing their thing. They're acting like normal, sitting like normal, doing whatever. Ovulation hits. She is wrapped around that water ball like her. It's like we're talking like she's clung to it because of all that stuff. So she will be wrapped around the water bowl because she'll want that kind of cool. Because I guess when they start ovulating, I don't know if the heat's just going to start moving. So I find them wrapped around the water bowl prior to, and then they do some more basking. So it's weird because it all depends. Each one will do different. I've had several females that do nothing different.
Right.
Nothing at all. And I'm like, clearly I fucked up. And then I open up the cage and they're around eggs. I'm like, what the? Where, like, I've had that happen. I've had females where, like, every single thing is textbook. Like, they come out, they swell, they curl around the water bowl, they're basking belly up, eggs. Like the perfect time ratios.
Right.
So it just changes. It just varies.
I sort of find that for my females that they sort of do the opposite, right? They're
on the
sort
cool
of
side?
staying on the cool side as the breeding season is kind of going or whatever. When they would be locked up, when they would be together, and then once she ovulates, it's like immediately she's going to the heat.
My guys tend to share the heat a lot. The female will usually be in, like, on top of the bin underneath the heat panel, and the male will be snaked in with her, or they'll be curled up kind of nearby. The good thing is with my stuff is that a snake can be on top of the bin, and then a snake can be inside the bin, and they're both still under the heat and stuff like that.
Right.
So I see that a lot too. But
I think,
yeah,
go ahead.
I would say I won't start necessarily see changes until she's full blown into it. And even then I'll miss it because there was one year where I'm like, I'm not sure if this female's going to go. I'm not sure if this female's going to go. And I kept the boy in there forever. And then I checked them. And when the female's about to lay eggs, she looks all twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's over here by the water bowl. She's in the bin all twisted. I'm like, come here. Like, let's get you out of here, buddy. Like, you don't need to be here anymore. Like,
yeah.
I've had that happen.
Yeah. She, so usually if I've seen the female ovulate, if I've seen her ovulate, I do pull the male out. But I rarely see the female ovulate. So I think the key is like sort of, I think, again, it's going to sound cliche, but being a student of the serpent, right? You want to know what your snakes are doing normally, right? Normal times, what do they do? Where are they at? Are they certain times of the year? Are they where are they at in the cage? Are they basking? Are they not? Are they trying to get away to the cooler side? All these things sort of play into like what you want to look for, because as soon as you see something different, it's going to stand out to you and say, oh, okay. And then that's what I would kind of write down in my notebook to sort of see how that plays out the next time they breed,
Right.
And sort of look for those cues. That's sort of how I felt, to Owen's point, that I call it the pretzel. I've never seen, so Owen's had this, but I've never had females where they flip over and invert with their belly up.
I love it. It's almost like I've had the, listen, I will second guess everything that's going on with my females and in my room, but the second they're belly up, I'm like, got it. Like, point taken. I will leave you alone now. Like,
why do you think they do that? Do you have any thoughts on why they do?
I think it's just so that they can make sure that all the eggs are warmed and their body is warmed up evenly. The eggs will definitely rest on the bottom and they will stack up on each other. Especially, like, I've seen the ultrasounds that are usually all jammed up on each other. That's because, like, if you've ever had an egg that's been fresh laid, like comes out of the female,
Right.
they are sticky, gooey. Like it is. There's no
Yeah.
heft to it. It takes another couple hours for it to actually puff up and become kind of solid. So they'll be all over each other. So I think she will shift her body around to make sure that everything is evenly heated and everything is her body and all this stuff. I would say that why it kind of happens with my girls more than say with yours is different types of heating elements in our cages. You do belly heat a lot, so it'd probably be easier for one of your girls in one of the bins to just get that belly heat. I would also say that because my girls could be bigger, that they have to shift some stuff around where yours are like, I have to warm 2.5 eggs. Done. Like, and it's like warming 50 something eggs is hard, man. So
it's very true.
I would say that would be part of it too, but it is definitely one of those things where I'm like, that's the telltale sign. And I've had girls that do it where the only thing that's still upright is their head, but then I've also had girls where it's like, as I'm pulling out the bin, they correct themselves, so I only see like a little bit of the belly, and I'm like, were you just basking belly up, or were you sitting weird? So it's happened.
Yeah, they and once that female ovulated, she sort of feels very tight.
Yes.
You'll see sometimes you'll see scale separation. These are all like signs that you're sort of
the belly scale. My favorite is the belly scales will pop out and become squares. And it's one of those that like that's people are like, oh, watch for scale separation. I'm like, watch those fucking belly scales.
Yes.
When halfway down her scales start popping out and staying out, you're on it because there's no room left in her lower half. Like it's full.
It's almost like, think of it like, I kind of look at it like love handles, right? So if you have love handles and you wear a comfortable pair of jeans, it's not going to look as much. But as soon as you put on the jeans from your 20s, and you try to squeeze into those, the love handles sort of
wear my leather pants from when I was a rock and roll star. No, buddy, no.
It's sort of like, her belly scales are now smaller than her body, so it looks it's hard to explain. But as soon as you see it, you will know
it. And they'll also, movement is not their friend. So they will pick a spot and they will sit. And then when they move, they will move slowly. And I've had females where they are the nastiest, most evil bitch of an animal. The second it's gravid, it's like curling up in my hands. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. Like the Woma python, the one that I gave to Lucas. Furious, evil creature. When it's gravid, it's curled up in my hands. And I'm like, all right. Like, and that happens. So like they will, also the other thing is that, you're starting to put your females away, like back in their cage, and you let them run through your hands.
Yes.
You can feel the eggs, but if you kind of give a little bit of resistance a little bit, and she doubles back fast as humanly hell, like, with murderous intent, you're probably getting some eggs in there because she does not like you touching those. So it's, I kind of can't wait. Like I almost forget all the fun things that happen with breeding until it starts happening, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is the fun part.
I honestly think that like this is sort of my feeling is that why people are sort of moving away from necessarily saying they have to breed is because now they're seeing observations of cool, behaviors in these setups that they have that don't have to do with breeding, but it's just like you're observing these things. And for people that are breeders, it's like all these things are so cool because it's like watching nature and how they evolve to produce. And it's a really cool experience. And if you're not a breeder, you should try it once just to sort of go through it.
Experienced maternal incubator.
Right on.
I did it once. It counts.
Man, that's all that matters, right?
But it was really cool. But I mean, I think I picked the perfect female for it because she would leave the eggs every day when the panels turned on. She would warm up. She'd go back to the egg. So that gave me a little bit of a time if I wanted to. Said that one egg that went bad and got moldy, I was able to take the clutch, pull that egg out. She didn't give a damn. She went back to the eggs. She did all the things. I would give her a quick feed if I really wanted to. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think if I had done that, I think other mothers who would have been either more protective of them or like, because she didn't look that horrible because she was eating the entire time she was on the eggs. So yeah, it would. I think you could do it a lot worse, but it was definitely very cool to see. And I'm glad I did it. Done.
Right.
No more. Never again.
Never again. Okay, fair enough. So at this point, she's going to have her pre-lay shed.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you'll see this on the internet as PLS. Right.
And also, here's the thing: is don't live or die by the prelay because sometimes she'll force it, sometimes she won't have one. So you need to pay attention. But at the shed cycle, or when she's definitely counted out. If you're doing breeding season in your female sheds, count out 60 days and mark it. Keep doing what you're doing and keep obviously altering things if you feel the need to alter or introducing the male, but mark it no matter where you are. If she sheds, mark 60 days because you want to pay attention to that in case she does start showing you other signs that she is going to lay. So, but yeah, pre-lay shed happens.
Right. And I think sometimes what happens is if you're coming out of that ovulation and if you're trying to feed the female at this point, she may not have ovulated if she's taken a meal. Right. Because typically my females, once they've ovulated, that's it. That's over. Game over. They don't care what you're throwing in front of their face. They're not eating it.
Girls and my girls are so weird. Like they're so not on the same page. I've had a female eat a rat and then lay eggs the next day. Like it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
They're just so weird. Like, two different types of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the cool thing about like when we talk about this is because there really is no set of rules, right?
No,
there is no. It's really kind of like almost an individualistic type of thing,
right?
You know,
it's your animals, like, your room, your way, and also there's so many different factors that would come into how you're going to have a different experience. But yeah, man, I've had because that's how the females would sneak up on me and hit me over the head with a chair behind me with the clutch I wasn't expecting. The rough scale that laid. She had her pre-lay shed, but she did it and peeled way back in the bottom of one of the cork tubes that I had for her, and the entire shed was back in there. So I didn't see the shed. And then she ate, and then the week she laid the eggs, she skipped. But I thought she was just going to be weird. And then I came in and she was around the eggs. So
I should ask, the roughies, do they fall into the same time frame as like the winter breeders?
No, they went into. I did them just same as carpets.
That's what I mean, like winter carpets.
Winter carpets, yeah, but they're changed. Like I mean, their temps are so weird anyway, and I give them a night drop year round. So like right now, the one roughy cage I have up here is starting to cycle down, and is it 8 o'clock yet? Yeah, it's just 8 o'clock now. Yep. So it's going to start cycling down, and it's going to hit to be about 77, and then that'll be it. But then the daytime high for them is still 88. So I won't start dropping their nighttime drop until the carpets reach 77 as a night drop.
Right.
So yeah.
So what I was getting at with the pre-lay shed with feeding the female, right, is like, so somebody told me that a long time ago. It's like, try to give her a meal. If she doesn't eat, she'd probably grab it, right? So I was like, okay. And then I had a female take. So I was like, okay, what does this mean? And then she immediately went into a shed, which I thought was pre-lay shed. And I was like, to your point, right, Owen, I was like, well, I guess she just took a meal because she was hungry.
Right.
But this is a pre-lay shed.
No.
It was just that I think she was developing follicles. I fed her a meal. I think that, because it just pushed her into a shed. And then she came, she went through another shed cycle. And then that's when that next shed cycle was the pre-lay shed. So sometimes they fake you out. And sometimes, to Owen's point, I had a female that didn't even have a pre-lay shed. And I've heard of people that have had the same thing. And it's kind of like, is this like a mandatory thing to happen? I don't know. I think
Well,
it's maybe
yeah.
because the female is just kind of like her
Uncomfortable.
body is basically growing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's got life growing in her. She's got these eggs, follicles that are growing into eggs, and she's growing, which expands those scales, which is why you see scale separation and all this stuff's expanding her skin, all this stuff. So maybe that's pushing her into a shed, and that's why it sheds. Maybe if she's not having a big of a clutch, or maybe if it's, I'd have to look at my notes to see if that
That's
female
like a
that,
slug clutch.
yeah, if it was had a lot of slugs.
There was that one year where I had a shit ton of slug clutches, and each female did everything by the book. So there were prelays, there was all that stuff, and then I just kept getting slug clutch after slug clutch after slug clutch, which can happen if your males don't get to that certain temperature. So temperature is very important for females. It's also very important for the boys. So,
see, to me, this is where I still think that we need work in understanding reproduction in python, well, snakes. And as far as we all can speculate about like what those reasons are of why they're slugs, but I think sometimes, at least for me, I heard certain things, and then I was like, yeah, that fits into there, where really maybe I was doing something else that was wrong, rather than really trying to figure out like, why did this female lay slugs? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? Did the male, is he shooting blanks? Was it because I spread them too thin between females? I all these things have been reasons, or maybe she didn't have enough,
didn't
nutrients,
have enough calories.
You know what I mean?
This, yeah, yep.
So who knows? I don't know, but I think all of those things are possible. It's just sometimes knowing what's what. But so basically, at this point, the thing that I look for, to Owen's point, you mark it on the calendar, even if you're not sure if that was what it was. I think about maybe 10 days out from laying eggs is when I start to see that female look really uncomfortable and go into what I call that pretzel lay, where she's just twisted around in the most weirdest. It's just weird, man.
And everything looks bad. Like, she's twisted.
Yeah.
Her skin looks dark.
Yeah.
She can tell she's kind of just unhappy.
Yeah.
And that you know your animals. It's like how you always know if one of them looks kind of sick just by your brain will tell you, which is why I always say, if you always go into one of your snake's cages and something is telling you that the snake is off, trust it and investigate.
Yes.
Because, and same thing, you're just going to open her and you're going to be like, God, you look horrible. Like, and something's not right with you. You don't look like you're having fun. You're correct. So,
So what can go wrong when she goes to lay eggs?
Well, she could totally, I'll just go through what's going on in my collection. She can totally miss her lay date. That's why you need to have that shit marked down, because you don't want to run to the vet and have her induced if you fucked up and are off by a week or two.
Yeah.
Which that's a quick, easy vet visit, but you're going to pay for all that. I've had to do that. I've had to induce 2 females over my career. Which is fun. Usually after they get the shot, it's usually about 24 hours when the eggs show up. They can.
Here's a question.
Yep.
Were the eggs good? I can't remember. I think some of them were.
It was my first. It was my first super caramel clutch. She blue plasted her lay date by almost 3 weeks. And then we induced her. The eggs hatched a week early. So I'm like, aha. So, we induced her. That was the other thing, is that that was when I didn't have lay boxes and stuff like that. So we gave her the shot, and then I put her in a cage full of mulch.
Okay.
2 hours she was laying eggs. So and she coiled them all up perfect. The other time those eggs were bad. That was a jungle clutch, and it was the slug was like 3 eggs combined, so it was this long like tube, and that was the first egg in the thing. So they induced her. She didn't get that really out, but she started to, enough to the point where I was able to see the egg coming out of her and realize that it was a long, not good slug. So I stabbed it with a needle and drained it, and then that came out, and then all the other slugs came out after it.
Gotcha.
That's the other thing is that if you come in and she's laid a couple slug clutches and she's nowhere near her lay date. Let's say she's a week before her lay date and she lays a couple slugs, hang in there because she's probably going to lay some good ones.
Right.
But the rest of the eggs are coming. If it's like she has her pre-lay and then a week later she lays a couple slugs, the entire clutch is coming and it's going to not be good. So, so that can happen with large malformed slugs that kind of block her up. Egg binding can happen, which is not good. That's where the eggs fuse, and that normally requires surgery, and also potentially can basically have to spay her. Is what ends up happening. So you can lose a breeding female that way, as far as being able to breed. You can have a prolapsed or ruptured oviduct, which I've had that happen before because I came back from my one carpet was curled up with her eggs and they were all covered in blood. But she survived, and that was terrifying. Yeah, you can have that kind of stuff. So you just got to keep up for that, keep watch for that kind of stuff.
The only two major things that I've had happen were probably I had a coastal that I had to palpate some eggs out of.
Yep, those are fun.
Which luckily for me, the eggs were close to the vent. So I called Dr. D. He sort of said, sent him a picture. He said, I think you could probably palpate them out. So there was 2 eggs. I palpated them out. The one egg, for whatever reason, somehow was blocked. It just didn't come out. Once that one came out, the other one came out right away. So luckily you could see that the egg was right by the vent. I don't know. I still to this day don't know what caused that. I'm not sure.
It can just happen. I mean,
but man, does it freak you out with breeding that girl again?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It can be that can be very.
But that's the thing is where you can have a female that does it perfect for several years in a row, and then 1 year something can go sideways. So you got to be on your toes, and that's why dates and stuff like that are important because you don't know when you're going to have to explain this to a vet, and don't. I would say people.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I would say also people who are. There's certain people in this reptile community who they're like, my snake is horribly sick. It clearly is not doing well. What temperature should I bump up its cage to make it better? Go to a vet. Don't have money for vet. What? Like maybe I'll spray it with water? No, it needs a doctor. Like it is. The same thing goes. There are some people who are like, I soaked her in some warm water. That'll help. Yeah, that could help if that's what's wrong or if she needs it. But more likely than not, if we're talking about breeding issues, you're going to have to get a vet involved. And if you slouch on that shit, no vet is going to drop everything to see your snake. You're going to have to schedule stuff out. So if something goes wrong, you're not going to be able to get her in for a day or two. Yeah. And you will, of course, learn how to maintain or do some emergency shit just by being here. Like I learned that cornstarch is a wonderful clotting powder.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Great thing to have in your vet vet kit.
I remember, God, this was years ago. This was when Morelia Forums was still around, and I remember that Mike Curtin had an issue with a female, and he actually aspirated the egg.
Yep, with the needle
inside of her, which in his again, this is why having the forum was great, right? Because you could go back and you could look at that and you could see that and read what he wrote up. He did this awesome write-up on it. And not that he would recommend doing it, but basically at this point, he was sort of like, well, the female's going to die because to your point, right? He couldn't get her to a vet. He made a vet appointment, right? He eventually did take her to a vet, but it wasn't like, 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever. You can just, just go to the emergency room
you can go to an emergency vet because they have them all over the place.
Yeah.
The price is not going to be good, and I guarantee you that the vet that you're going to see will have very little to no reptile experience. You might get lucky and get one that can do reptile stuff, but it's going to be a bad thing. And I mean, I would say that if you got to that point where you're like, I have to stab it with a needle through its body to drain the egg, so much shit has gone wrong. And you're right. That is like this is the last thing I can do to save this animal's life. And
right.
you
He ended
know,
up saving her.
Yeah, but you don't ever want to be in that situation. I've been in that situation. Don't do that, man.
No, not good.
Oh.
So basically at this point, you're thinking about, lay boxes, things like this. Some people are no lay box. Some people are lay box. It really just kind of depends on, I guess your caging or whatever the case would be. But I would, I like to give an egg box. If you're breeding in racks, which, at this point, I don't know if that's the way that I would proceed going forward, but it can be done. But if you're going to do it, I recommend putting all sphagnum moss in the entire tub.
I've been told by someone who lives in this house who is better at this shit than I am, that if there's no reptile vet on staff at an evet, they will not even see.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Apparently, I talk too loud, and people are correcting me now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that correction. Real life correction. I like it.
This is what happens when you have a vet tech on staff here at the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We should have went right to the source, right?
Are you kidding me? Why are you speaking to me? Just bring her on. She'll tell you everything.
Right.
Yeah, but that's why I have. So the closet downstairs where you used to keep all my shit. Get out of here. Get out of my podcast. What?
I am the reptile.
I know you are.
No, at the clinic, people have been started bringing the reptiles to me.
Oh, Christ.
Because you don't have one on staff.
Okay.
And I'm the best.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Close the door.
She's the reptile vet on staff?
Well, no, apparently now, because she knows what's going on most of the time, because she's fixed most of my animals when shit breaks.
She's even fixed mine.
Apparently, people on staff are just bringing the reptiles to her. So, just get paid like a reptile vet, we'd be in business. But, but anyway, I would say you do the whole tub with sphagnum moss. I try to keep it one bin full of mulch and moss and stuff like that. Try to get her to lay there.
Right.
Since I've been offering the bins that I have with the lids, I have not had a female not lay there. That's not true. I had one lay under the paper because she was weird. That was a jag. We cannot put Jag in the same cube. Like, you know, it's like, here's the wonderful little bar chart where you're like, here's charting all this thing. And then one point's way over here. Like, what happened there?
Right.
I don't know. Like, Jag. Like, Jag happened over there. So, all the other ones, nice little neat bins where they put all their babies. Jag, I'll put them here. So, but that is something that you have to worry about as well, because there will be one female that will try to put them in the water bowl or will try to put them there. So
it'll be the Jag.
The Jag. The Jag is always going to be your problem. I've had one Jag where she perfectly wrapped it, and I'm like, don't trust you. Give me these. Like, it was
right.
So
it's when I was putting together a collection based upon morph breeding and stuff, and the rule that I followed was that if I was going to have a Jag, it would be the male of the pair, right? Because
that's stupid.
Right, because my feeling is that I like to do maternal incubation a lot, and not that they can't do it, because Jason Balin's had success with many tiger Jags doing maternal incubation, but I don't know. I just didn't trust it. It's like, I don't know if it's true, but I just
don't trust an animal that when it stresses out flies all over the place to be caretaker of the tiny eggs. So
if I'm doing a cage, I do I do a 15 quart tub, type of thing. Sometimes maybe a little bit bigger, but basically I'm putting a hole in the top and filling it with moss, and the female will go in there and sort of do her thing.
It's the was the orchid moss or whatever at Lowe's. That's the perfect moss. Don't get any other kind of moss, and just put a bunch in there. I like to put a bunch of mulch in there year round, but then I kind of put more mulch and more moss in there near breeding season, because she'll get in there and she'll kind of spin a little bit and she'll make a big divot, and that's where she wants to put the eggs. So
yeah, I sort of if I'm going to do maternal incubation, I really try to focus on making sure that laying area, that nesting area, is sort of dialed in and really where she wants it. And I guess at this point, you sort of have
to
to
move the fucking bin. If she puts it someplace, leave it there. Don't move it.
Yeah, I've done that many times, and she kept moving it back, which to me shows you how in tune they are with their environment and the temperatures that they want. That was my first. That was my first year breeding, 2012. That's what. Well, my first successful year, I should say.
Yep.
And then basically at this point, you're just waiting for her to lay the eggs.
Yep.
And you gotta go into the season whether you're gonna do maternal incubation or artificial incubation. But really, once that female has laid and wrapped, is really my definitive decision on whether or not I'm gonna let her keep the eggs, or whether I'm gonna take her away from the eggs.
Yeah, check the body condition. You can, you can wait until she leaves the eggs to check her, but check her. But then also, you need to have a safety net. If you're going to sit there and be like, I will do nothing but maternal incubation, at least have an incubator ready, or a friend a couple towns over that has an incubator ready.
100%.
Also will cost you a Macklot's wipe on, but
and cause Owen a headache of
frustration of a project that he still can to this day not get fucking off the ground.
It's cursed. But so I guess the pros and cons of each, I would say maternal incubation, probably the biggest pro. It's just the fact of seeing the female sort of loosen her coils up and there's the little babies pipping out of the eggs. I mean, it's pretty cool to see. It's pretty freaking cool. Even for an avid non-maternal incubation
like me,
guy like Owen.
It does give you that wonderful photo shot. The problem is my female, like, I think 3 days before the eggs hatch, she like pooped on the eggs, and I'm like, "Why? You ruined the shot!" Like, oh god damn it! It's like so, but it was cool, and I would say those babies came out storming and ate like crazy, and it was awesome. They were great. They were great little things.
It's been said that animals that are born from maternal incubation, they feed better. They're a little bit bigger. They're able to withstand temperature swings a little. They don't get as stressed with that kind of stuff. Now, is that true? I mean, maybe all of it's true. Maybe it's not. Who knows? I don't know. I have had maternal incubation clutches where they were just average size carpets. Now, maybe they were bigger than what they would have been if they were artificially incubated. I'm not sure, but I don't really. I've heard people. I've even said that, and I think with my experience has been, it's not a fair assessment that I did back in the day because I was also dealing with morphs, which I think sometimes when you sort of mix morphs into the thing, some of them are a pain in the ass to freaking get going.
They're genetic mutations, so everything's going to be fucked up.
They're broken.
Yeah, everything is broken.
Right. So that's really the pros. The cons would be, basically that female is not going to be able to be bred back-to-back years.
Right.
That's for sure.
You got to be ready for that, and also she's going to look
horrible.
Yeah,
you're going to have to get her going back in, and
all the other females that you didn't do maternal. You're gonna be like, you guys are finally putting on weight, and then she's going to get off those eggs, and you're like, oh my god,
you really have to pay attention to making sure you get her back into good shape and back in business. If that's maybe you do it with some, you don't do it with others, but really, I mean, that's the biggest con. I think.
And you prep for potentially her not being ready to go next year. So if this is a female that you want to do back to back, pull the clutch. If this is a female that like you're like me, where I give girls years off and stuff like that after 2 years of breeding, maybe because she's going to get next year off, you can let her maternal. Like the female that did maternal incubation this past year, she's not breeding this year.
Right.
So,
I think the other thing in my experience that you have to kind of watch with maternal incubation is sort of the idea of humidity, right? You
Mm.
can't wet the eggs, but you sort of have to have. So I've had one clutch where they crashed because they sort of, I think it got too dry.
Yeah, had that happen.
And, the female didn't do anything differently. I think just where she was at in the room, the humidity was not the greatest. So, and again, when you're sort of pushing that dry heat in the winter, you have to be real careful of making sure that that humidity stays on point. So, an artificial incubation, I guess the pro is that, that female, you can get back on food quicker.
Set it
She
and
doesn't
forget it. It's
and
just,
and then you put it in the egg box and you sort of let it do its thing. And, as
babies.
long as you
Yeah.
got a good incubator, you should be pretty good. So, incubators, sea serpents makes a pretty good one that a lot of people like. And then people like myself and Owen, we sort of use an old Pepsi
Mine was
fridge.
made by Coca-Cola.
Coke, Pepsi,
It has the soda bottle on the handle.
right.
Yep. Which
Yep.
I love the idea of anything with a glass front is always good to help you out. But I mean, we've seen people who make incubators out of like coolers and
Sure.
all of this stuff. They just, obviously spend the money on the right kind of computer system to run it. Air circulation is definitely important. Airflow is definitely important. And then you just set it up for 80 something, 87 to 88 degrees, and you let it go.
Pretty much.
The eggs will hatch, regardless of what you do to kill them. The eggs that will hatch will hatch. Yeah. Trust me, I've tried very hard to kill carpet eggs over the years, and they still hatch. So,
even when the temperatures
at 80 degrees, it'll just take them longer, but they will hatch. Yeah,
right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there's some speculation from people whether or not the temperatures of the eggs, if we have that right or not. If you look in the complete carpet python book, Nick did a lot of. I think Nick and Justin both did a lot of maternal incubation with data loggers, and they saw surprisingly spikes, huge spikes, where people would freak out. If
your incubator did this, people would lose their minds. Yeah.
And that's the other cool thing about the female when she's, I should backtrack to that, just the behaviors that she does during maternal incubation. I've seen them where they'll leave the eggs and they sort of go through the water bowl, and then they'll come back and they'll kind of wrap them around. Why that water doesn't hurt them, I don't know, but for whatever reason it doesn't. Maybe that's to be humidity. I've seen it where she sort of tucks her head down into the coils. I know Jason Balin talked about how she would sometimes they would urinate, to sort of get that humidity up. I've seen to where they scoop up underneath the eggs and actually move them away from the heat, which is just kind of amazing when they don't have legs. To be able to do that,
grab them underneath,
just the muscle, to be able to do that is just, I don't know, it's just amazing. I've seen them leave the eggs and bask and then go back to the eggs. Love that. Which is pretty cool. And you're always nervous when that happens because you're like, oh, is she going to go back to the eggs?
When is she?
Oh my God, is she going to go back to the eggs?
Oh God!
Oh my God, is she going back? Hopefully, eventually, she usually does.
Every day I would watch her do that, and it was and she would come out, bask, and then she'd go back to the eggs. And it was one of those things where the first couple times I'm like, oh God, and then she got into her rhythm where it was like I would know she'd be off the eggs in the morning when I went downstairs to make sure the lights were on and stuff like that. Then she'd be back on the eggs, and then she'd be off the eggs again around noon when it was the warmest point of the heat panel to warm up again. And then she'd be back on those eggs, and then she'd probably do it one more time where she'd leave them right before the panels turned off or went down to the night drop of 70 something, which is what I do year round. But as the temperature outside got warmer and the room didn't drop as low, she stopped doing that. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Awesome. It was fun. Never again.
Yeah. So basically, egg box is I use those. I use like the suspended above the water
Use
thing.
the
Sim containers.
Sim containers. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The one thing that I would say, I don't like the idea of the water just being loose, right?
Me either. I think that's too much of a factor. I don't like that. I just do regular shoe boxes with
Yeah.
holes all over them, all either side. I have some containers and I've used some containers. I do like them.
Yeah.
It just I can fit more in there with a shoe box than I can with a sim container.
Yeah.
And I normally do a mixture of perlite or vermiculite and
Uh-huh.
water to the point where it's the consistency of wet sand.
Okay.
So I used to measure it out because it used to be like 1-to-1 ratio and stuff like that.
Sure.
Now it's literally just pouring it and mixing it until I'm like, good enough, and then that's it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think what I sort of do now is sort of the same thing. I use well, it doesn't really even matter because it's not going to touch the eggs, but I think I usually use vermiculite in with the water. I don't do a mix because they're never going to touch that.
Right.
Sort of suspended above that. Some people use like light diffuser
Yep, I do.
grid to sort of separate the substrate from the eggs. And that's pretty much it. You put them in there, you sort of, look at them every once in a while. As they get closer to hatch, you'll see that, one tip that Buddy Buscemi sort of said to me is like to make sure that condensation on your egg box, if you're getting that, is that if you sort of get like, I use the dowel rod, I put it in the back of the incubator. So the egg boxes were sort of on a little bit of a tilt so that if any kind of condensation happened on the top or on the front, it would just roll down and right back into
you know when you're getting close when the eggs shrivel up and dent in on themselves.
Yep.
And then when there's condensation constantly, because those eggs are going to give off a ton of heat when they get close to hatching.
Right.
So all of a sudden you'll go in there and you'll have a ton of condensation on the ceiling of the egg box of the lid, and then you take that off. You might shake it out or do whatever, and then put it back on. Come back and check a couple like hours later, condensation's back. Like they're giving off a shit ton of heat. And then the fun part happens where you get to have all the joys of what can go wrong when the eggs are hatching.
Yeah.
What to do with babies. Because, I mean, I've had babies slice out of their egg and then go back in and drown. I've had them slice out of their egg, go into another one's egg and drown. I've had them break off their egg tooth and drown. I've had twins, which is terrifying. And I can't even believe like Nick does, like he's had like the triplets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, or even the small like pygmy pythons. Like no.
Yeah.
Because they're very wee. I've had you and I both had ones where they ripped their umbilical cord off their yolk and bleed.
Yep.
Which is why I say always have the cornstarch.
Yep. I've had it to where so it was they pipped out of the egg, but they were sort of like sitting with their heads there, waiting to come out. I went into the egg box and I sort of like looked too long, and this one carpet decided it was going to take off out of the egg, and it was dead because I guess it came out. So Rob gave me a little tip.
Yeah.
If you put like a paper towel,
wet
like
paper
one
towel,
of those select the sizes, and you kind of like damp it down and sort of put it on top of those eggs. The snake might not be as scared and take off out of the egg, if you will. If you take a peek underneath.
I have had carpets come out of the egg with their umbilical and the yolk still attached.
Right.
What I would do in that instance is throw them in a bin by themselves. Don't throw them in with its siblings. That's just stupid. And then put a bunch of wet paper towels in there.
Right.
And then they usually will kind of chill out in there and then leave it alone. Do not keep checking on it because it's already freaking out, but leave it alone and then it will actually keep absorbing that yolk.
Right.
It's just out of the egg. I've had where when you're going to go try to separate the eggs when they first are laid, where I've ripped one.
Yep.
If you rip one, just kind of jam it in there right up next to one of the other eggs, because then you kind of plug the hole with just the sheer force of it going up in there, and then it'll all dry and it'll sit there, and then it'll hatch. Fine, no problem.
Yeah.
I know people who are like, well, you throw fiberglass at it. I'm like, just jam it up there amongst its siblings. And,
Yeah. Wasn't it Damian Hyde that used, what did he use? Shit.
Gauze?
It was like, I want to say it was like New Skin.
Yeah. The fake, or the skin bandage stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've sort of used that and had some success with that.
I've seen that with gauze. Like they put the gauze on it and then they kind of paint that new skin over it with.
Yeah.
You can, but like I said, I've ripped a couple eggs and I've just put them and jammed all the other eggs around it, so it was all kind of pressed, and then it would just be fine.
Personally, I don't separate the eggs.
I try not to.
I don't separate them out. And if you have an egg that goes moldy, I leave it.
Yeah, I think you do more harm than good. If you have a really bad one, you might be able to stab it with a needle and drain it, but don't try to like rip it out there, because you have run the risk of tearing out one of the other eggs. I mean, worst case scenario is you can cut it out. Like I think I had one of the corn snake eggs this year went bad, but then some gnats got into it, and there were like maggots and eating it. So I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this. So I took a pair of scissors. It's a dead egg. I just cut it off of the other eggs and then heaved it. And there was a little bit of shell left on the eggs that used to be attached to it. And then they hatched fine. So.
I thought it was interesting that I remember Garrett, he did, I should probably have asked him this, but I know Garrett Hartle, he did an experiment where he put springtails in the incubation box. And the idea is that they would eat the mold.
And keep the eggs clean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I would imagine that at some point they're coming into some sort of insect as sort of cleanup crew.
Bugs are horrible, but yeah.
In the in the natural nest area of a carpet python, I would think that that's being done. So I just an idea. Anyway, basically at this point, once they're hatched, I used to pip.
Yeah, I don't.
I really don't anymore. I used to pip, and I just did it because other people did it, and that's what I was sort of told. I think if it went for a long, long time, and I knew my temperatures were on point, I probably would just make a little tiny cut so that there was a cut in the egg that the snake could get out of, or
maybe
make the hole bigger or big enough that it could get out of the egg.
If everybody else in the clutch is pipped and there's like 2 eggs or something that happened, that's when I'll cut it.
Right.
But,
and they don't all pip at the same time.
Yep.
And for the love of God, can we stop scooping the snakes out of the egg?
You're born whack. Like it's.
I mean, God, that just irks me so bad. And I hate
we
when
have to do it or they'll die. No,
I hate the idea of like you've waited months,
wait
but you can't wait another couple days to see what morph you got. I mean, I get the excitement, but come on, man! Like, really, you got to slice the top of the egg off. I don't know.
No, and I mean, I've had that point where, like, they've pipped, and I can tell that it's a really cool jag in there, and I'll get excited, but I'm not going to rip it out of the egg. Like, I can wait a little bit longer just to see what happens, and also. You run the risk of hurting the baby. Like
I guess I've had just some experiences where because I was impatient, I cut the egg too early. I screwed them up. And I just feel, I mean, some people do it and they don't have any problems. It is what it is, but you definitely don't have to scoop the animal out of the egg. Like let the animal come out on its own.
Yeah.
I think that's more retic people than I've seen any other, where they just like sort of cut the top off and just scoop them out.
I kind of can't wait to get the Argentine here because I want to get the female pregnant just so I can take a picture and be like, when should I cut? She doesn't have the babies yet. Like it's because that's what it comes down to. It's like you're that impatient. Like if they're not meant to hatch, like here's the other problem is you're gonna let's say you jump the gun, you cut the egg, you rip the baby out of the egg. Congratulations. Now you have to deal with this thing that you just ripped out of the egg that may not have been ready, that could die because it didn't absorb the yolk, that it's going to be a bitch eating. Like, congratulations. You've now done this to yourself.
Right.
So let it sit in the egg. It'll be fine. If it's not fine, then that's a headache you didn't want to deal with.
That's the one thing that I have noticed. This is one observation I have, as opposed between maternal and artificial. It seems that maternal incubation, you get more babies pip around the same time, like very close to one another, where they all
come
sort of pip.
storming out of those eggs.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas with artificial, you sort of have like, you'll have the 1, 2 pop out, right? And then you'll have like maybe another one. And then a couple days will go and you'll see a slit, but they're not out. Then you start to see other little slits, and then you'll see the one that had the slit the day before. Well, now the head will be out, but they're not all coming out at the same time. Whereas with maternal, and again, this could just be my observations. It could be my snakes in my room doing what they do, but
with my things,
yeah. When I do or maternal, they sort of just like, you'll see one pip, and then it's usually like they're all pipped the next day.
Right.
So I don't know, just an observation. So usually at that point, when they pip like that, I'm pulling out the clutch away from the mom. I'm putting them into the incubator, believe it or not.
Right. So that they
can give them a couple days and keep that temperature where it needs to be and get them going. And then once they're sort of out, but here's the thing. Do not put them in the sim container because
that lid is not closed. Yeah.
So if you're going to transport them to the incubator and put them in a box, make sure it's a box that latches.
Locking lids, baby. Like you have to make that mistake once. Locking lids. Yeah.
I had a whole clutch of citrus tigers. Yeah, they were straight citrus. No, they were het albino citrus tigers, and they all got out. Luckily, they all stayed in the incubator, but that was not fun because they were up in the top, and I had to take the incubator apart. And obviously, there were still eggs in that incubator, so that was tricky.
Zebra jaguars for me, and then mangrove monitors. Because I came in once and there was a baby mangrove sitting on top of the egg box, and I'm like, oh no! And that was
I wish I would have paid more attention when you hatched them out.
Fun. I can tell you right now, Python temps, baby. Like they like everybody. That was the one thing where I'm like, I hatched mangroves, and they're like, how'd you do it? I put them in the incubator with the carpet eggs. So, like, why was that?
What do you mean?
Was that not something I should have done? Like it was.
All the monitor people are like, how dare you?
Yeah, I'm like, I just threw it in there. They hatch. So
okay. At this point, let's talk about the. So the next couple things we'll talk about is.
Mind-numbing pain that will come when you're attempting to get your babies set up and feeding.
First month of life, what to expect, getting babies to eat, keeping notes, picking holdbacks, putting babies up for sale.
I would say the first thing.
You thought you were done.
Yeah, you're never done. It's never over. It's just a cycle of hell. But I would say that the one of the most important things I've learned is to wait and to give them time. Yeah. So set up the babies, get them fresh water, do all that fun stuff. Now, I sex them right out of the egg because it's easy to pop them right then and there. And then I just know boys, girls, this, that, and the other thing. And then I usually keep them together for a little bit, but then I will separate before they start having their first sheds because I need to know who shed and who didn't. Right. And then I won't try feeding them until I think maybe 2 weeks after their first shed.
I go a month.
Yeah,
well, I guess that's right.
Say more. It'd be about 2 weeks. I want to say it was about three weeks after there. So it'd be close to a month, if not a month, after their first shed. That's when I try feeding because that's when they're going to eat because they shed when they were done, when their stomachs are empty and it's time to hunt. And I've had more success by waiting.
Yes.
Getting them feeding than I have had when I used to do it. It was like, You shed, I'll fall out one fuzzy and I'll try to feed it to you. Like, and that's dumb. So
Right.
wait, give it time, give them time. And also keep your options open when it comes to prey items. Not everything's going to eat a European white mouse, and that's fine. I set up my guys, they have one high box, it's a little plastic cube, and then they have a water bowl. You do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I use a 6-quart tub. I guess my setup has evolved for babies over the years. But basically it comes down to, I think the fundamental things that you want to have is obviously a water bowl, some type of perching, and some type of hide.
Yep.
Right. That's pretty much what you want. Now there's some thought, and I would sort of tend to agree with it, that carpet pythons are sort of hanging from something to eat. And
I would agree.
so I think that it helps get them going. Maybe it makes them feel comfortable, whatever the case would be, that they'll go. But remember, carpet pythons are eating, skinks and lizards and frogs and like these things
geckos
in nature. It's not like they're going and finding a mouse nest and raiding the fuzzies out of it. It's not happening that way. They're eating little skinks and stuff. So sometimes they can be tricky to get going because you're giving them something they don't want. I've used scents. I think probably I've used the go-to Morelia method is chick down to get them going, and sort of you cut off a little bit of the down that's on the bottom of a chick, you rub it all over the prey, sort of will get them going. And the weird one from NPR that we have used is that you put them in your car and you take them around the block, take them on a little trip.
I would say that the best I chick down definitely works. I've dipped them in tuna fish water from a can. That's worked. Chicken stock worked. I've fed them just the chicken feet from a chick that I fed to something else. That's worked. Chicken heads have worked. My favorite thing is that you can get small quail from Rodent Pro.
Yeah.
Perfect size.
Yep.
Perfect size for a small carpet. It's a big meal for a carpet, but it's about the size of a hopper. Perfect. And that I got 3 carpets this year working on those. I've also done frozen minnows and live minnows. Those have worked. It's just have your options open, man. Like, it also with places like Reptilinks that sell the frog scent and the lizard scent.
Yes. I've used that.
I got my baby Mad Hogs this year. I got them to finally eat by taking a hopper and wrapping it in knobtail gecko skin.
Yeah, and now that I have those,
thank you God. I need listen. Anything that they shed, you need a bag, and it's Owen's bag. Every time you're cleaning and every time they shed, you put the sheds in the bag. Tell me when the bag is full, I will come get it.
Right. Geckos, monitors.
Melissa pointed out that I left a box full of GoPro shit downstairs. Like,
oh, okay.
That's what I said. I'm like, wait. I'm like, no, I returned all that shit to Eric. She's like, then what's this? I'm like, that'd be Eric's box. And she's like, well, does he know it's missing? No.
I didn't even open the box yet.
I don't know either. So yeah.
All right, fair enough.
All right, good enough. Like, I'll get it to him. Don't worry. Yeah. Oh no, and you go to Eric. So it's whatever. But that's
okay. So I'll put your bag together.
There you go. But you have to be open to that kind of stuff, because I think I've had more success in figuring out what the animal will eat and then providing it than forcing it to eat what I want it to eat or what I'm prepared for it to eat. Right. They will grow faster. They'll grow better, less stress. Fine.
Yeah.
That one baby carpet that was on quail, it had 3 feedings of quail, like a frozen thawed quail. Right. Then I just threw a hopper at it and it ate it. And
the good thing about the good thing about carpets is once you get them going, they're good.
Well, it's
just sometimes they can be picky, but it's just because
it's just the way they
giving
are.
them the wrong thing.
Yeah. That's not a skink, Okay, well, you're right. But the same thing was with the olive pythons. I offer the olive pythons first thing. nothing but frozen thawed rodents, and they all turn their noses up at it.
Right.
Next thing you offer them quail, birds. They all eat it. Then you just keep showing them the mouse, and if they don't want it, you give them the quail. Now I have all but one eating rodents, just straight up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'll go over my system. I learned sexing them out of the egg from Owen.
He's a good teacher, that Owen guy.
Yeah. So, because it seems to be the easiest way to do it. So what I do is I stole this idea from Matt, right? So I get those little circle stickers that you use for a price or whatever. So I use the blue for a boy, red for a girl. They come out of the egg. I separate them out of the egg. I sort of put them in their setup. I put a blue sticker on it for the boys, a red sticker on it for the girls. If I think it's a boy and I question it, I just put a little question mark on it. If I think it's a girl and I question it, I'll put a little question mark on the sticker, right? And then maybe follow back up or have somebody that's better at sexing like Owen or somebody else come and sex it later on. But from there, what I do is when I get them to feed, I put a green sticker on the tub. This way, I know who needs attention and who doesn't need attention just from looking at the rack, right? And I'll sort of try, I think what I do, and sometimes this would get people crazy with their OCD, that all the animals from the one clutch have to be together, is that as they start to feed, I sort of put them together and move them around, if you will. So that when I come in, I know, okay, now I only have 5 babies that aren't eating. Oh, now I only have 3 babies that aren't eating. Okay. And then you sort of go from there. And then every time they feed, I sort of put a little mark, like a little line to say, okay, 1, and I get up to 5. And then usually once it's at 5 is like when I would say that it's good to start selling.
They're rolling. Yeah.
They're ready to go. They're sort of dialed in. Now,
that's I don't 5 consecutive feedings in a row.
Correct. They never refused. Right. So I tried, I sort of, it's sort of a combination of what Matt was doing and what Nick does. If you bought a carpet python from Nick Mutton, he'll send he has a little sticker that he keeps on top of on top of the deli cup that he sends it in, but he puts that on the thing. And as they shed, whatever, he's writing it down for you. I used to keep records like that. I've sort of fell off of that. I just sort of do the feedings. I don't know. I have all kinds of data, weighing them up. I sort of weigh them right when they come out of the egg. I don't know. To me, it was just learning, like, what am I looking at? It's putting data with what I'm looking at, sort of putting it together, so to speak. But now I can kind of look at a carpet and say, oh, that's the right size. Oh, that's small. Oh, that's that kind of thing. I used to get super excited about them pre-shed. But as I've learned, and Owen has taught me over the years, it's like, let's wait till it sheds before we jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
And he's usually right. So I did take pictures in my first couple of years of what they were at every shed, just so I could see like how they develop. And what I've sort of learned is an eye for holding things back. And I don't know how to explain it other than, a lot of the animals that I sort of gravitate towards and have made stellar adults is usually they have this hypo type of look. It's not hypo. No, I shouldn't say hypo. Ghost type of look to it.
Yeah.
I sort of, you can look at the scales on a baby, especially after it had it first shed. You could sort of see if there's going to be tipping in the inside of the saddles, if that's what you're into, for like jungle carpets and stuff like that. I don't know. I sort of hold on to them. I look for weird patterns. That's sure. Stripes.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, that's kind of why I put all the girls in one bin and all the boys in one bin for maybe a day or two, because whoever's different is going to stand out.
Well, that's a good idea.
That one. Because then you look at it.
You're seeing them all together.
And exactly. So And I usually try to do, and I didn't used to do it before. I would never have the holdbacks if I didn't need them. Now I try to keep 2.2 of every clutch.
Right.
And like this year is weird because last year I kept all girls. I didn't keep any boys.
Right.
This year I'm keeping all boys. Like it's like I kept an Xenic Jag this year, and then I kept 2 tigers because do I need male tigers? No, like a hole in the head. But these are
it's so hard to give them up.
Like they're so good.
So hard to give them
That's
up.
the problem is I'm sitting here and I'm like, I should only keep 2 male tigers. 2. But there are 3 male tigers that I'm like, So I need someone to come and buy this one tiger to keep it away from me. So, but it's just, and that's where it goes, where you gotta keep holdbacks because it will really help you in your own stuff to move forward. And even if a year from now, I'm just like, you know what? I didn't need 3 male tigers. I'll sell the one. Sure. But I've been able to watch all 3 develop, and I've been able to sit there and I can take this one male and be like, all right, dude, you're selling as a former holdback and get my money's worth there. And also projects change, an animal might die or something like that, and you've got a hole to fill that you didn't think you had. So, you're your best customer. Don't be afraid to have holdbacks.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely you breed for yourself first.
Well, and that's the thing is because you're not going to sell all the animals you produce in the year by the time the next breeding season rolls around. So, why not take the best cream of the crop and just kind of stick them over in a corner over there as your holdbacks? And then you know what? You can always decide to sell them later. But you never get it back if you sell it. So
usually it would be. My approach has always sort of been like if I'm sort of on the fence with one, but I know it's killer. I sort of
Owen.
give it to Owen, or that one. That's where Riley or Lucas.
You send it to somebody within striking distance. Like
exactly. Rob,
like that, and also when you have friends that are also in it, their projects. So this animal doesn't fit me, but I'm going to drive it over to Eric's and make him take it because it fits him. Like it's his project thing. So that helps too. And also if I were to ever need an animal, I know where to get it. Like I know where the genetics are. I know what's going on there. So that's happened before too. So why not?
Yeah. And even now we got the babies feeding. We got the babies established. They're good to go. Now comes to me the worst part of the whole gig. Selling them.
Yeah. You put a drill to your head.
Yeah. I mean, this is just a whole episode on itself.
It is because here's the thing. You're gonna have to grow some tough skin real quick if you're gonna start selling reptiles because there will be people out there who think that the best way to buy a reptile from you is to be an asshole, and you gotta be ready for that. There are also some really lovely people, and you're going to meet a whole lot of new people, make a whole lot of nice friends, but there will be some people that will ruin your entire day because reasons. But
luckily for me, I really haven't had experiences with bad customers. I haven't had experience with people inquiring at all, really.
It's because you don't list shit anywhere.
Yeah. I've always wanted to be the guy that doesn't have to put anything up for sale, but somehow you sell the snakes. I think I am on that path.
I think you achieved it, buddy. I think it's one of those. You're becoming one of those guys where it's like people are like, I want to buy a snake from Eric Burke, and somebody goes, well, it's like it's a dark bar, and some dude's like, Eric Burke, you say? He's only legend. You might have to go to this one field in Philadelphia on this one night, and then he will arise, and he'll be like, "Okay," and that's
exactly.
Yeah, and that happens, and there are people who are like that, And dude, selling can be mind numbing. You're gonna have to deal with
shows.
Shows is another.
You got to
think.
think.
You might not want to deal with shows because that's something else. Is that you
I do
have
not.
people that are going to try to haggle with you on this stuff. You have also people who you're going to be set up next to some people who might be dirtier and mite-ridden than
I've
stuff
had
like
that.
It's
At Tinley.
exactly. So that's something you have to deal with and decide if that's something you want to deal with. You have to decide if you're going to start doing wholesaling and things like that. If you have a bunch of babies and, you're going to want to offer those things.
I sort of like the idea of giving, working with a shop, like Riley has a shop and, we know,
Dennis's friend Dennis works with a guy who has a shop down there. I know a guy who has a shop in Jersey who buys a lot of my stuff. So, yeah.
But working with them and sort of, being able to say, okay, I have,
that's the best part too, because you now have these snakes and it's snake money without having to get the money out of it. So like this guy is like, hey man, I'm going to produce a clutch of 100 flower rat snakes. And I'm like, here's a box of coastal carpet pythons.
Right.
Can I have 100 flower rat snakes? Like it's like that. Trades are awesome, dude.
Yes.
Like, so
it's my favorite. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you're into, if you have higher end animals and you want other higher end animals, it's easier to trade for higher end.
It really is.
It's hard to trade for like a higher end. Like if all of a sudden an imbricata became available in the United States, I'm sure that they would be somewhat pricey. And you're probably not going to be able to say, well, I have this diamond coastal clutch. I was wondering if you'd be up to trade.
I have these Bredli Darwin Jag Sibs. I'm gonna pass.
It's probably not gonna go.
Well, I mean, listen. You can if somehow the imbricata was somebody who owned a reptile shop, you could probably get to a point where the amount of Bredli Darwins could equal one imbricata, but that's going to be a big box and a lot of babies. And I'm not sure if the shop's going to want all those. So, but it's really cool to get that kind of stuff and establish those kinds of things. And it's also fun to just, I mean, my joy is hatching shit that I've never hatched before. So, I mean, I love hatching my baby carpets. I love seeing them every year and all the new stuff. But I mean, dude, these past couple years have been great. Like, we're talking rhinos, we're talking olives.
Sure.
We had mad hogs last year, and now I'm sitting there and I'm like, what hasn't bred in this room? Like, who can I focus on this year? So,
you want to hear something crazy? I think the Ackies are breeding.
What? No, that's the final line that keep you away from becoming a lizard breeder. Breeding the lizards.
Yes. I think so. It's kind of crazy.
I've heard once you set them up and they start breeding, it's like having some sort of, they're just machines. It's just like some people have had to separate their Ackies because they keep breeding too much.
Yeah. Well, that's for another episode.
That's for the lizard breeding episode.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something you need to think about, selling the snakes, right? And they might not sell, to Owen's point, it may be a year before you get rid of them all. And you're going to have to feed them for that year.
Yeah.
And, carpet python, baby carpet pythons, I feed every 2 weeks during the summer into going into the fall.
Yep. 10 to 14 days is fine. Perfect.
Hopper size. It's kind of what I do. Once you go into, never mind. I'm not going to give that tip because then they're not going to be any.
They'll know the secret. Yeah.
I'm going to give that tip to the Patreons when we do the Patreon.
That's right.
So, yes. There we go. Yes,
yeah.
100%. Yeah. So, anyway, once you get that going, I mean, it's just a matter of, putting them out there that they sort of, this is where the marketing side of things comes into play. This is where if you have a YouTube channel, you sort of do it. This is where coming on podcasts and talking about what you're breeding and whatnot.
Facebook, this, that, and the other thing.
And we also did the thing, I'm just going to throw it out here, but the hashtag MPR. Oh, so what did we say it was? Wait a minute. Hold on.
It was MPR 2022. Buddy posted, which is fun because I'm going through. I'm like, I made that one. That one's mine. I actually still own that one.
So we'll, oh, there you go. Hashtag NPR 2022 breeding season.
Yes.
If you do that on Instagram and you post up to that, we'll be able to see
Check
what
out
you
your
got
shit
going
and
on the
discuss.
season and hopefully help promote. And, if you got something
Yeah.
cool, whatever, it will be cool.
I like
to see that.
coastals. And if you are doing that, I think what you should do this year is take a picture. I think what you should do later is go take a picture of the Yakapuri depots and hashtag them in there. Because I mean that'll draw some people to that.
Yes.
I mean, the shame.
100%.
It's a shame none of you are getting any of them. They're
Oh, hell
ours.
no. Yes. There's only a select few that are
Oh
able
my
to
god, I
tap
can't wait.
into that
but
one.
that's the thing is, I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, that would be fun, man. And I keep forgetting about all the shit that's breeding this year, like the Yakapuri depots. I have to call Dennis. He has one of my Maclots pythons.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, I haven't talked to him in a while. There's that kind of stuff where it's like, hey, it's just going into breeding season is just fun. But to your point of selling, you also then have to you're going to have to deal with shipping, which if you've never done that before, that can be daunting. Luckily, there are a lot of great shipping companies, Ship Your Reptiles, Reptile Express, and they have videos on how to properly pack and set up an animal. Don't wing it.
Yes.
Pack. And if you're going to include a heat pack, anything below 40 hours is worthless dog shit. 40 hours is your minimum, because if it's ever delayed, you want to make sure you've got 40 hours for FedEx to figure its shit out.
Right.
Okay? And establish this beginning that you only ship to the hub. Because then if you only ship to the hub, you only have customers that are okay with you shipping to the hub.
Yes.
Because I
100%.
hate shipping to people's homes.
I'd
used to
rather hate
go to the hub. I hate it so much.
I used to hate when somebody probably the person that I buy from the most that it started that shipping to the hub was Ryan Young.
Yeah.
And when I would buy something from him, he would hold it at the hub. And I would be like, God damn it, now I have to drive to the hub. Now I would not
I don't
have it any other way.
I don't have it shipped to my house. I ship it to my hub. The guys at my FedEx hub, which if you're in my area, and because I've heard some of the other hubs in and around my area are kind of sucky. The Reading FedEx hub, they're a bunch of nice guys. They know what's going on, and if there's an animal involved, they see those packages and they bring them into their offices where they sit until you come pick them up.
Right.
Fantastic people. So get to know your people at the FedEx hub. They'll take care of your shit.
Right. So when I did that, Owen said, "Well, this is the hub by you, 500 Maryland Drive, right?" And I go in there, and they're like, "Oh, it's the snake guy."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What's up, snake guy?
The one dude, I came walking in, and he's like, "Hey man, you're not like the only reptile dude that comes in here." He's like, this guy and this guy. I'm like, "Yeah, I think I do." And they're like, "Hey, he ships geckos out of here." I'm like, "That's cool. Like that's fine, and it's really good. Like we're beyond the days of having shipped carpet pythons labeled as fragile computer parts. Okay, so it's all right, So my one ex-girlfriend used to make cookies for the people at the FedEx hub because then they would be nice to her packages and shit like that. And I'm like, there you go. That makes sense.
That's smart.
It's fine. So it's less daunting and less scary than it used to be, but it is still shipping still sucks. I hate it so much.
Yep.
But
there's certain windows where you shouldn't do it, but that's even another episode all in itself.
Dude,
so we'll continue along with these episodes on.
Episodes of horror. Yeah.
But
the Rough Python shipped on Monday and arrived Thursday. I wasn't worried at all.
I was worried for you, man. I was.
Why do I have such problems shipping?
I was like,
species?
oh God. Of all animals to be stuck, what is going on?
It's like if something were to happen, I'm just standing out in the middle of a field, just looking in various directions. Yeah.
I looked up in the sky and I said, God, why, God? Why are you doing this to Owen?
Why do you do this to Owen? What has he done to you lately?
I don't understand. Why have you forsaken me?
God. Yeah.
Anyway. But all good. It arrived. Everything is well.
Oh, she's fine. She ate a small rat.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So that will conclude the 2021 breeding episode part 2. And I think we will hit on some of these other topics, like selling snakes. We'll do a show for that. Shipping snakes. We'll do a show for that because I want to get Rob on that show.
Let's get Michael
because-
Arnold on this show for the shipping snakes one.
Yeah,
and we can yell at him about what's wrong.
Yeah, we did do an episode with him.
I know, but I didn't yell at him. So now we're gonna yell at him. Like,
right. You know, all that kind of stuff. You know, I think is worthy of another episode. But
it really is, because some people might be heading into this for the first time, and you know, it on the outside looking in, it looks easy.
Yes,
it's not, but
no,
it's totally worth it to get into it the right way. So
yeah. So hopefully, we wish you all the best of luck in the 2022 breeding season, and hopefully you hit those clutches that you you know, have been dreaming about, and raising up these animals to get to size, and you know, yeah. So hopefully, people have some cool stuff hatching out. I think it's a good time because I think the reptile market seems to be the strongest it's ever been.
Yeah,
seems to be growing. You know, just God, I can't tell you. Like every day, I meet more and more people that are into reptiles, and like just people that I never would think would be into reptiles are, you know, like crazy. Like my sister is nuts, man. She's just nuts. Dude,
good. She's worse than you. Okay, good.
Well, I guess the you know, genetically we're all kind of the same, but between my dad getting back into reptiles, my sister into reptiles, her husband's into reptiles, it's just ballooning.
The successful anole breeder, your father.
Yes. Yes. But yeah, so there you go. Hopefully, like I said, wish you the best of luck, and we will close it out and get the heck out of here. And we only got a few. I think we got, well, basically we were a month away from the holiday show. So with that, if you have some airing of grievances that you would like to share with the NPR,
please let us know.
Please email them to info@moreliapythonradio.com.
Yeah,
and we will read them on the air.
On air. We will go through your list of grievances, as we're probably already just hammered out of our minds.
Yes, which is the funnest.
Just the best part of
the year.
Yeah, we will go through your lists as we talk about the pending holidays with our friends and family that are on the podcast, and obviously we'll have some special guests. It's be a fun time.
Yeah, and of course, we wouldn't be going into a new year without some things coming up that may be new. So some podcasts that didn't make the cut, some podcasts that are going to be in the works for 2022 to add to the network. Can you add more? Yes.
Yes. The answer to that question is yes.
So yeah, it should be cool. And yeah, I always like going into the new season. So yeah, we're off at the end of the year.
Yep.
And yeah, it's coming quick, man. I can't believe how quick it is. So which means I got to chop on the calendars, and I've reached out to everybody. So if you're listening to this and you have not sent me your pick, please send it to radio so I can get these calendars done and put to rest and get them in, you know, Christmas stockings for 2021. You know,
let's not have a repeat of that one year where nobody got calendars till March.
Yeah,
like it was.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was bad. Let's not do that again.
So our website is moreliapythonradio.com, and that's probably where we're going to be selling the calendar from. So you just go there, click on it, blah 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 blah. There you go. And if you want to get in contact with us, info@moreliapythonradio.com. Social media, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Morelia NPR Network. That's where basically all of the info about all the different podcasts that we have are going on. Yeah, that's the Teespring store.
Yep.
And the Patreon. I guess we're going to be doing one of them real soon. It's one of the private chats with our patrons, which is always fun. Yeah, cool. Other than that, that's all I got.
Yeah, and then check that out. And then obviously we got some shows coming up too. Like we're vending. They added a couple shows in the area to like Hamburg because of White Plains still being shut down. So I might be vending some of those. If not, I'll see you at those zones in the area. And that's all we got for everybody tonight. So we'll say thanks all for listening, and we'll catch everybody back here next week for some more Morelia Python Radio. Good night.